Hey everyone, Emily here and welcome to my kitchen. It's officially fall and finally starting to feel a little bit more like it. That means the start of soup season. Soup is one of my favorite things to make all year round, but it's definitely a little bit better once it starts to get chilly out. And I'm starting to see one of my favorites, butternut squash, at the grocery store. I thought that this would be the perfect time to throw together some butternut squash soup. This is such an easy recipe and it comes together really quickly. I'll show you how to make this. Let's get started. I have a couple tablespoons of olive oil heating up on the stove in a large pot, and I'm going to get started by chopping up my vegetables. I'm going to begin with my onion. I'll cut off the top and then slice this right in half. I'll leave the root intact and then peel off the skin of the onion, and that's going to make things just a little bit easier to dice up. Once you have the skin peeled off the onion, you'll just make a few slices into the onion, making sure not to cut the root. And then you'll make a few slices across. Once you've done that, you can slice right across those cuts, and this is going to make it super easy to get a really nice even dice on your onion. I'm just going to repeat that with the other half of my onion and toss that into my soup pot. I have my pot of oil heating up on the stove. I'm just going to add in my onions. And then I'm also going to add in 2 cloves of garlic. I like to use these little frozen minced garlic cubes when I'm using something that doesn't necessarily require fresh garlic. So when you're cooking something, these are perfect. I'll add in a few cracks of salt and give that a stir. I'm also going to add in a few stalks of chopped celery. I'll pop this right into my soup pot. I'm going to let those vegetables cook over medium heat, stirring that occasionally until the onion is translucent. And while that cooks, I'm going to prep my butternut squash, and this is just about the hardest part. I'm going to first peel this. You want to peel that until you have that nice bright orange color. So it might take a couple swipes across with your vegetable peeler. Once I have this peeled, I'll cut off the top and the bottom and slice it in half. Then you'll just scoop out and discard the center. Jax loves pumpkin, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna love butternut squash. I'll give him a little piece to chew on. Jax! Come here. Now from here, you'll just cube up your butternut squash. The smaller the cubes, the quicker it's going to cook, and then you'll add it in with your onions, garlic, and celery. I have half, and I'll pop that into my pot. I'll get started on my other half. Now, if you really want to make this easier on yourself, this is the hardest part. You can just buy some pre-cubed butternut squash. At this point, I'm going to add just a few seasonings. This is a little seasoning blend here. It has thyme, marjoram, rosemary, basil, sage, and lavender. You can add a mix of those seasonings on your own or whatever you like. I'll add in a few cracks of pepper. And lastly, I'm going to add in my vegetable broth. Now I'll probably add about 4 cups, but you can just eyeball it based off of how big your vegetables were. So you want to make sure that they're well covered and there's going to be enough liquid in there to not only cook your vegetables, but also to have a good consistency for your soup once you blend this all together. So I would say once it's just covered and then some. So for me, that's going to be about 1 quart. I'll turn the heat up briefly. Let this come to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer for about 30 minutes. While the soup cooks, I have a little bundle of parsley and chives that I picked from my garden. I'm just going to chop that up to add at the very end. My soup has just a few minutes left on the stove, so I'm going to go ahead and give the broth a taste to see if I need to adjust any of the seasonings before I take this off the heat. I'm going to add in just a little bit more salt. This has been cooking for about 20 minutes, and I'm going to test it by seeing if my butternut squash is fork tender. I have one of my larger pieces right here. It is, and so that's how I know it's ready to come off the heat. I just took my butternut squash soup off of the heat, and now I'm going to blend this up so it has a nice smooth consistency. Now, if you want a chunky soup, you can leave it just like this, or you can only blend part of it. Do it however you prefer, but I like it to be nice and smooth, so I'm going to blend the entire batch. I'm just going to ladle this into my blender. I'll add in a little bit of broth to make sure it blends smoothly. And then I'm just going to pulse this. Once I have it broken up a little bit, I'm going to set this onto a higher speed. That's the consistency we want. And now I'm going to transfer this back into my soup pot. I'll just scoop the remaining soup that hasn't been blended into my blender and then continue the process until it's all smooth. This is looking beautiful. It's a nice smooth consistency, and I'm going to add my final ingredient. Now you can use cream here if you prefer, a little bit of heavy cream, but I'm going to use some full fat coconut milk because I like the flavor and I prefer to make it non-dairy. I'll add in about half of the can, making sure to get the cream that's on top. Give this a nice mix together. My soup is still pretty hot, so there's no need to return this to the heat, but if you find that your cream or your coconut milk cools your soup down a little bit too much, you can just bring it briefly back up to a simmer. Finally, I'm going to sprinkle on my fresh herbs. I have a mixture here of parsley and chives. I'll sprinkle in about half of it and mix that into the soup, and I'll reserve the rest for garnish. It's had a few minutes to cool off. Let's give it a try. So good. Butternut squash soup really is one of my favorites, and this is such an easy recipe to make. The coconut flavor does come through, so if you're not a fan of it, I would opt for just heavy cream or leave it out altogether. This is going to be a very creamy soup regardless. This is perfect for the fall weather that we're finally starting to have, and of course, one of my favorites to make all year round. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon so you can get notified every time I post. As always, you can find the full recipe to this in the description box down below, along with links to all my social media pages and my Amazon page where you can find all my cooking favorites. Hope to see you back here next time.